I've teamed up in this video with two of my favourite fellow YouTube movie reviewers, that's Stu of StuTalks and Paul of iWatched, to bring you our top 5 choices in our respective favourite movie categories. Stu's went for coming of age films and Paul has went for modern sci-fi classics, but you know I had to go for comedy movies. I'll include links to their videos in the description of this video and also in my end card, so once you're finished with this, please don't forget to go check them out. So this is a video that I've simultaneously wanted to do for a long time, but also didn't want to touch it at all. Something as vague but also as all-encompassing as comedy movies, how do you distill that into 5 choices? Probably quite poorly. Special mention of course has to go to films like The Hangover, Life of Brian, Anchorman, The Producers, Big Lebowski, 40-Year-Old the list is endless. But alas, unlike the number of toes on a foot of somebody from Dundee, there can be only 5. So, kicking off my list at number 5, it's Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber is a film that I've talked about before in my top 5 Jim Carrey movies, and if you'll have seen that video, you know I had to include it in this. I know Jim Carrey's rubber face shtick isn't for everybody, but it's hard to watch this comedy classic from the Farrelly brothers and not be won over by the story of these two lovable idiots played by Carrey and Jeff Daniels. And sure, There's Something About Mary might be the more widely accepted movie, but for me, it's Dumb and Dumber all the way. It doesn't matter how many times I watch it, Dumb and Dumber makes me laugh every single time. And that's when you know that you've got a good comedy movie, when you know the punchlines that are coming, but it still makes you laugh anyway. At number 4, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. As I said earlier, The Life of Brian is up there, it's got to be, but for me, the better Monty Python movie is The Holy Grail. I don't think there's a single film that I watched more growing up. I mean seriously, when I got my hands on that DVD, I wore it out. It's one of those movies that I watched young and laughed, but then you watch it years later and it's even funnier. I mean, everything about it just cracks me up. You get the Nice to See Me, Brave Sir Robin, Killer Rabbit, the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, It's Only a Flesh Wound, everything about this just floors me. How did I forget about the Trojan Rabbit joke? How did I forget about the coconuts? Everything about the Holy Grail is hilarious. Weirdly though, one of the things that I actually remember most vividly about this film is a special feature in the DVD where the Camelot scene was actually reenacted in Lego, and if you haven't seen that, make sure you do. I'm sure it'll be on YouTube somewhere. I remember it so clearly. It was like stop motion Lego before Lego animation got really sophisticated, but it still had like the faces that would be animated, and you had like the substitute figures for the characters in the real movie, like the 3 guys in the archway and the guy beating the red parrot off the table and the skeleton clapping his hands. And I am not ashamed to admit this, but many years later, I still know it word for word. Camelot, Camelot, Camelot. It's only a model. Shh! Knights, I bid you welcome to your new home. Let us ride to Camelot. Dun 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 dun. When knights of the round table, we dance whenever we're able. We do routines and chorus scenes and football. I'm not gonna sing. I'm just not. I'm not gonna put you through that. Next up, Blazing Saddles. Okay, I know what you're thinking, that I'm just cashing in, but I promise you, I'd actually planned out and written my points to this video the day before Gene Wilder died, and after spending a while thinking about this film and his performance in it, it came as a genuine shock when I learned that he died less than 24 hours later. And look, I'm not saying that that was my fault, or that I've got special powers. All I'm saying is that just in case, I am reviewing Justin Bieber Never Say Never as soon as possible. Blazing Saddles is one of the most iconic and well-regarded comedy movies of all time, even more so now with the death of Gene Wilder. In fact, I would actually be willing to bet that this is commonly listed as the best comedy film. Even over 40 years later, the biting satire on racial prejudice still rings depressingly true. With a lead character called Black Bart and more uses of the N-word than an NWA album, this is a film that just would not be made in 2016. And I know that makes it sound racist, but I promise you it's not. It's an excellent send-up of racism, bigotry, and the Western genre as a whole. It's almost a shame that with a fantastic script and a necessary message in it, this film is probably most famous or infamous for its fart scene. This is said to be the first film that managed to get an audible fart past the censors. However, when it was first released for TV, it was still so controversial and offensive that they actually muted the segment. So basically there were several minutes of cowboys just sitting around eating beans silently. Jeez, can you imagine if they'd seen Borat? And number 2, the Jark. Alright, I realised that out of my list this is probably the curveball. In fact, some of you might not even have heard of it, which is a shame because this is Steve Martin's first feature-length starring role and is arguably his most definitive role outside of planes, trains and automobiles. Martin plays Nathan Johnson, a bit of an idiot convinced that he was born into a rural black family, only to find out one day that not only is he actually white, he's also adopted. Tough day. On learning this, he decides to leave to start a new life, and on the way, he invents a device that makes him a multi-millionaire. The device is a little thing that sits on the end of your glasses to hold him up, but it turns out it actually makes the wearers go cross-eyed, and he ends up losing all his money as a result, so I guess this could be described as the first film that's a rags to riches to rags again to riches again story. Much of the screenplay is based off of Steve Martin's stand-up routines, which at the time had made him a superstar, so you can imagine the kind of goofy humour that runs throughout this film. In fact, this film is so good that there was actually a scene cut that had Bill Murray in it. Bear in mind that at the time Bill Murray and Steve Martin were colossal titans of comedy, and I can't imagine that a scene between the two would have been unfunny. Although this film is really funny and is a legitimate contender to be one of the best comedy films by anyone's standards, the reason that it gets such a high place on my list is it actually means quite a bit personally. I remember very clearly being quite young and sitting down to watch this film with my dad, and I think it's his favourite film. And it's also one of the key movies that actually got me into films as more than just a viewer, you know, like as somebody who wants to learn about the behind the scenes stuff and the medium and what makes a film good or bad. I don't even know what it was about the Jark that sparked that, because I don't remember it being outstanding in any kind of like technical element or anything like that. I think it was just, you know, a combination of everything coming together to invoke a reaction to somebody, you know? Like, why does my dad enjoy this film so much but not this film? Why does this particular combination of words and actions make somebody laugh hysterically, but this combination of words and actions doesn't invoke a reaction at all? Does that make sense? Or am I just being, you know, a jerk? And topping off the list at number 1, Airplane. Look, it just is. Don't fight me on it. I think you'll struggle to find a proper list of comedy movies that doesn't have this as its number 1 choice. Definitely top 3. It's without a shadow of a doubt my favourite comedy movie, and for good reason. It's just non-stop gags. Practically every line is either a feed line or a punchline, and almost every interaction between characters somehow manages to cram in a sight gag. Directors Abrams and the Zuckers were absolutely ruthless in their approach to what made it into the film. They screened multiple cuts and versions, and any gag that didn't get a big laugh was immediately cut, no questions asked. What results is an incredibly lean comedy film that has almost zero filler in between gags. In fact, so much so that in an investigation by Love Film, Airplane has been scientifically proven to be the funniest film of all time. In terms of laughs per minute, they took a list of favourite comedy movies as voted for by the members of Love Film, and then they counted every laugh, divided that by the runtime, and there you have it, an actual quantifiable measure of how funny a film is. Airplane came out on top with a score of 3 laughs per minute. Science, bitch! If it could somehow be tracked, I would also be absolutely willing to bet good money that this is the most quoted comedy movie of all time. I mean, seriously, just think, how many times in your own life have you heard somebody butcher the line, "I am serious, don't call me Shirley"? A whole raft of imitators and competitors were released over the following years, like The Naked Gun, Top Secret, Airplane 2, but we won't talk about that one. But for me, Airplane is, and most likely always will be, the funniest and my favourite comedy film. So there's my top 5 comedy movies. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Have I made some kind of glaring error? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching my pick on my top 5 comedy movies. Please don't forget to check out Stu's video on the top 5 coming of age films and Paul's video on the top 5 modern sci-fi classics. If you're a fan of my content, you're going to love these guys because these are definitely 2 of my favourite fellow YouTube movie reviewers, and they're definitely also, don't tell them I said this, a lot better at reviewing movies than I am. I'm too much of an idiot, I just make jokes and stupid things. These guys actually know what they're talking about. So again, don't forget to check them out and make sure you let them know I sent you. Anyway, if you like this video, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, and don't forget to share it with a friend, because sharing is caring, and rhyming is shaming. If you're new to my channel, then please consider subscribing to keep up my content as I put it out, and I don't have any more YouTube end things to say, so smell you later.